Hey y'all, it's Megan from Made for Mermaids, and I am sewing up a Finley pattern today. On this video, I'm sewing the crossover waistband in the shorties link. If you want to see another video on sewing the contour band, I will link it down below. You need to cut two front pieces, mirror images, one for each leg. This is the upper back piece. You need to cut one on the fold, then two lower back pieces and one gusset. Make sure to mark your star on those two pieces. And then for the crossover waistband, you just need one piece on the fold. If you're doing pockets, you would cut and sew those for the first step. Now for the gusset piece, you are going to match the star on the gusset to one star on the lower back piece, and you're going to line those raw edges. You should have a small little overhang after you match those pieces, and you're going to stitch it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I highly recommend basting this in if you are not used to doing gussets, or if you're new to it, or if you're using slippery fabric. Just baste it in first, it will be quicker. Then you're going to open that gusset, and with the other lower back piece, right sides together, we're going to align the top edges of the lower back pieces, and then the bottom edge of the curve is going to go along the gusset edge, just like we did on the other side. So again, you're going to have a little overhang on the edge. You will also have a small gap at the top of the triangle gusset, and it will get caught in the seam. Again, baste this in if you're new to adding gussets or if your fabrics are slippery. So there you can see the little small gap, but once we sew this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, then it will get caught at the seam. You can press the seams towards one side and top stitch if you'd like. And there's the gusset all put in. Now the next step is going to be attaching this lower bottom half piece to the upper back piece. So I like to find the center of the upper back piece because it was cut on the fold, and then match the center upper back to the center seam on the lower back, and then I start pinning the edge and then ease those curves in, and we are going to stitch this together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then again you can press it toward one side and top stitch if you'd like. Next, we're going to take our front pieces and put them right sides together, and you're going to stitch them together along the crotch curve with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then we're going to stitch the front and back together, put them right sides together, and you're going to stitch each side from the bottom hemline to the top with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. The next step is going to be sewing the inseam. So with the front and back pieces right sides together, we're going to sew them along that crotch. So what I like to do is find the center of the gusset piece and then match it to the front center seam. This pair I'm making my niece is so tiny it wasn't really necessary. Now this should all match up perfectly. If your inseam is a little off, you may have cut or sewn it off a little bit. So just start by pinning the center of the gusset to the center front seam, then pin the bottom hemlines, and then ease the rest of the curve into place. Now you can go ahead and set your shorts aside, and we are going to start working on our waistband piece. You're going to take your waistband piece and you're going to fold it with the wrong sides together along the long edge, just like this, and you can press it with your iron. Then you're going to fold one of the short diagonal ends toward the center, like this, And then you're going to take the other end and fold it towards the center. And you're going to overlap them, just one on top of the other, matching those angles at the end. And you're going to baste them together on each side where they overlap. Then I quickly found the back center of the upper waistband and put a point. And then you will measure and mark a 1/2 inch from the center point on your waistband and a 1/2 inch from your center front seam right there on your pants, and then match those 1/2 inch points. And then you are going to start pinning the waistband on. Now the portion where it's overlapped on the waistband, you are not going to stretch. So that whole basted part from the yellow clip to the yellow clip is going to be not stretched. Then we will match the back center notch of the waistband to the back center of your pants. And then from that crossed over edge where it's overlapped, that's basted and not stretched, you will slightly stretch the rest of the waistband. So on that front center V, you don't want it stretched so you get a nice crisp V. Now we're going to stitch this together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. If you want your V to be very crisp, then I would use a sewing machine a few inches along each side. I like to serge mine and sew mine starting from the center V and ending on the center V to get a more crisp V shape. Then you will press your seam and we're almost done. So here's what your crossover band will look like when you are finished. And your last step is going to be hemming the bottom. So you will press the hem towards the wrong side by a 1/2 inch and then edge stitch in place. And then your Finleys are complete. These are so quick and cute, and I can't wait to see the pairs that you make with them. If you have any questions, you can leave them down below. And as always, if you make a pair, I would love to see them posted on our Facebook group or tag us on Instagram at Made for Mermaids, #Made for Mermaids Patterns, #Finley Pattern.